The CrossFit Open. The season begins here, and for the majority, it ends here too. CrossFit has recently announced the structure for the 2024 season, and yes, some things have changed. Some expected, and others less so. And of course, everyone has an opinion, but it is worth looking into some of the possible reasons behind the changes to try and understand exactly what CrossFit is trying to do. Now, Adrian Bosman did go on the CrossFit Games podcast with Chase Ingram and discuss the entire structure and the changes for the 2024 season, so I would recommend going and giving that a listen. But what I wanted to do is a series of videos breaking down the different parts of the 2024 season leading up to the CrossFit Games, discussing what's changed and why, the possible reasons behind it. I'll probably reference that podcast a couple of times. So this video today is going to focus specifically on the 2024 CrossFit Games Open. Now, before we get into the details themselves, I think it's always important to keep in mind the different viewpoints of those that will be taking on the Open, and surely this is something that CrossFit has to do themselves. And what I mean by that is you'll have people that view the Open as the first step in a competitive journey. Now, whether their goal is to reach quarterfinals, which will be slightly easier this year, but I'll talk about that in a future video, or semi-finals, and for a very select few, the games themselves. Or for others, it's more about community. They do the Open because they want to support their local affiliate and whatever they're doing for the Open. They want to throw down with some friends, or maybe they just want to see how they're doing year on year. So it is important as we discuss the change to keep in mind that there are these two different groups of people that are taking part in the Open. So the first question we need to ask and answer is, when does the CrossFit Open begin? And very, very technically, it is February. And that is only because next year is a leap year. So it will actually be February 29th. And what that means is that for the majority of people, they'll be taking on the workout in the first couple of days of March. And obviously the rest of the Open workouts will be done in March. So we should probably think of March as Open month and forget the fact that it's February 29th. And then we need to know, how long will the Open run? It has been different in past years, but this year, once again, it will be a 3-week Open. Whether that is 3 workouts or slightly more, who can say, but it will be running for 3 weeks, as it has the last couple of years, and yet 3 weeks still seems to be a very divisive issue. Yes, a number of people still long for a 5-week Open, and let me put it out here right now, I am not one of them. More than happy with just 3 weeks. And I did actually put this question out on my Instagram, JasonCF Media, to ask other people what did they think. 5 weeks or 3 weeks, what do they prefer? Now, looking back to the Games podcast with Adrian Bosman and Chase Ingram, Bos mentions a number of times that they are responding to feedback from affiliate owners and that they are trying to make life easier for affiliate owners. So it was interesting when I asked the question that the majority of affiliate owners that responded to me were in favor of a 3-week Open. They felt that was the right amount of time to keep their community engaged and excited. And from my limited experience, that's also what I observed locally at CrossFit Bath. It is hard to keep that excitement going for 5 weeks. And if I'm being really honest about myself, after 3 weeks, I'm really just wanting to get back into my normal training routine. 5 weeks did tend to drag on a little bit too long for my liking. And just looking at the feedback that I got, it seems that many people felt the same as I did. 3 weeks, that was long enough for the Open. Others pointed out that perhaps 4 weeks would actually be the ideal number. A bit longer than 3, but not quite 5. Have a CrossFit Open month, and maybe that's the sweet spot. So it would be good to see if CrossFit will ever try a 4-week Open. Those that wanted a 5-week Open tended to be the more competitive, although some did say that a 5-week Open was a real challenge and an achievement for your average gym goer. I thought that was a nice way of looking at it. But I do wonder if those that want the 5-week Open that are a little bit more competitive may fit into that 25% that potentially would be going to quarterfinals anyway. But we'll discuss that in the next video. Now, speaking of moving on, we know that this year the teens, masters and adaptives will have different competitions to crown the fittest among them. And yet the Open is still the first stages of competition for all of them. Well, sort of. The exception being the adaptive athletes who will be doing their Open through wheel WOD, as opposed to CrossFit organising it, which makes sense as they are the specialists and will be able to give those athletes the Open that they truly deserve. Now, of course, that still raises an interesting question around funding for these other events. Will they see any of the money from the Open, seeing as they're not able to run online qualifiers for these events? Well, most likely the answer is going to be no. Now, after the 3 weeks of the Open and however many workouts that actually turns out to be, the top 25% will be moving on to quarterfinals. Now, that might sound like a lot, and again, we'll discuss that in the next video about quarterfinals. But looking at that percentage from the Open side of things, some feel this devalues the Open. It's too easy to progress to the next stage of competition. Now, of course, I see the point of view there. But I've also got to wonder if anybody who truly believes they could make it to the CrossFit Games is actually worried about the Open, even if it was less than 10% moving on to the next stage of competition. But what the Open does do is give these athletes the chance to get prepared for submitting their scores, recording their videos, making sure they're reading the standards correctly. And we might think, well, hold on, these athletes have done this many times. Surely they're experts by now. And you'd like to think so. But year on year, we see athletes getting penalties because they haven't read standards correctly, or they've made a mistake in their video, or even people not qualifying for the next stage of a competition because they haven't submitted things on time. So it's good that the Open will give them a chance to work out maybe some of the flaws in their system where perhaps these penalties will not stop them from moving on to the next stage of competition. And then hopefully by the quarterfinals, they're good and ready to go. And then for the rest of the community, dare I say the markedly less fit of us in the community, well, it gives us a nice chance to see just how incredible these athletes are, how many thousands of spots ahead of us they are when they just coast a workout and we are giving it our all. But what do you think about a 3-week Open? Does it work, or do you prefer 5 weeks? Or is the Open even still the best way to qualify people for these stages of competition? Has the gap in fitness between your average athlete and those that can make it to the games just grown beyond that? Or if you've got any other thoughts about the 2024 game season in general, please let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and come back to see the following video where we'll be talking about the quarterfinals. But if you'll be doing the Open next year, well, I look forward to seeing you on the leaderboard, even though you might need to scroll down quite a bit to find me.